You know, every problem that you have in your life, God is using for His glory and your good. So that doesn't seem fair. Well, think about it. Think about some of the best training tools that God uses are the hardest things you go through. When you train for the job that you have now, was it the classroom training that helped you learn how to do it, or was it the pressure situation where you're caught in it and things are going crazy and you learn how to do it? It was the second part. Oh, we had to go through the book learning. You had to go through all that, but where you really learn the nuts and bolts how to do something was when you're in the pressure situation of the crazy things happening around you. Romans tells us, for the believers, for those who've trusted Christ as their Lord and Savior, all things God uses to work together for good to them that love God, to them that are called according to His purpose. God uses all those things. Every last one of them. Even Judah's plan, which was better than the initial plan of killing him. We don't know exactly what Reuben's plan was. Reuben maybe was going to let him go. So maybe not. So Judah's plan wasn't maybe not as good as Reuben's, but it was better than the rest. But they sold him. And then in verses 29 down to the end of the chapter, we'll look at verse 29. Reuben returned to the pit. Indeed, Joseph was not in the pit, and tore his clothes, and returned to his brothers and said, "The lad is no more, and where shall I go?" So they took Joseph's tunic, killed a kid of goat, and dipped it in the tunic, took the tunic in blood. Then they sent the tunic of many colors, and they brought it to their father and said, "We found this. Do you know where your son's tunic, or whether this is your son's tunic or not?" And he recognized it. "It is my son's tunic. A wild beast has devoured him. Without doubt, Joseph is torn to pieces." Then Jacob tore his clothes and put on sackcloth on his waist and mourned for his son many days. And all his sons and daughters arose to comfort him, but he refused to be comforted, for he said, "For I shall go down into the grave to my son in mourning." Thus his father wept for him. Now the Midianites sold him to Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh and captain of the guard. Talk about that story in a couple weeks. So now they lie. We see Jacob's sorrow, but we see what the brothers do. Okay, we got to come up with a plan. We'll rip the clothes. We'll rip the tunic. Dip it in blood. "Hey, Dad, what do you think happened?" They didn't directly lie to him. They deceived him. They're wrong with what they did there, but I guess in the grand scheme of things, whether when you sold your brother in slavery, you know, what's worse, to lie afterwards, or they're both bad. And Jacob's sorrow, you can only imagine. I've lost both parents, but I have 4 children. I have a brother who lost, my brother Mark, my mom's second brother Mark Divler, lost his oldest daughter when she was 3 years old. Of course, he also lost, we both lost our mom. His dad's still alive. But he'll tell you, and so anybody else who's lost a child, there's nothing that compares to having to bury one of your own children. In this case, he didn't even get to bury him. He thought his son was dead. I would also probably say, on a side note, the brothers are responsible for their wickedness and what they did. But Jacob, his actions definitely played a part in how this happened. Had he handled his children differently, they indeed would have responded differently. Now they're both still responsible for their own sinful choices.